What do you want in a leader? A simple question that everyone has to ask themselves. What traits and qualities do you want to see? What styles and methods of leadership do you want to see? Leadership is all around us, and even if we don't think we are likely leaders of something in some way. Our politicians, our teachers, our bosses at work, celebrities, influencers, board chairs are all leaders. And even in less direct situations, leadership persists, like in friend groups, classes, projects, games, music, and so much more. So, what do you want in a leader? If you haven't asked this question of yourself, I encourage you to do so. My name is Isaac Kramer, and I want to be a leader. I already am in some ways. More specifically, I want to become a politician. I want to try to help as many people as I can, as well as trying to make positive change, and to try to fix things that aren't working, because many things aren't. In this podcast, I want to go over leadership styles, attributes, and theories, and I want to talk about the styles, attributes, and theories with my leadership, as well as the leadership I hope to show in the future. But before we can talk about those things, first we've got to talk about how leadership and being a leader is very affected by who you are, your backgrounds, and your values. These include tons of things like gender, sexual identity, race, class, how you were raised, your friends, your family, where you grew up, your job, and your interest, to just name a few. There are so many things that make you, you, and these shape and impact you as a leader. I am very fortunate and privileged. I'm a straight white man who has grown up in a very supportive home with a loving family and never really had to worry about money at all. I was also homeschooled my whole life until I got to college. These things have all shaped me in tremendous ways, and these things have definitely affected my leadership. I feel a calling, and in some ways a responsibility to use the unique situation that I have to be able to help people and also to try to bring people together. To be able to see different sides and to try to help people come together, to compromise, respect each other, and to do good things together. I want to be able to do this. These are the values and background that make up my leadership. At least hopeful future leadership as a politician. So what are leadership styles? Well, according to Dr. Greg Arfield and Dr. Eric Morgan in Human Communication in Action by Kendall Hunt Publishing. Quote, Lewin, Lippitt, and White, 1939, were one of the first groups to conduct research on the impact of leadership styles on small group behaviors. From their research, 3 distinct styles emerged: authoritarian, democratic, and laissez-faire. Unquote. So what are these? Well, they're pretty straightforward. Authoritarian leaders, like the name suggests, see followers as needing direction and managing in order to reach the goals the leader sees as best for everyone. This can be effective, definitely, and especially useful, I'd say, when the leader is very knowledgeable on something that the followers know little about, like experienced volunteers leading student volunteers to build a ramp for someone in a wheelchair, for instance. This type of situation usually requires skill and experience to get things done right. I speak from experience as being a student volunteer. And usually there's a certain way for things to get together to make the ramp, and the student volunteers might not know much about this. But this type of leadership style doesn't really provide room for growth or creativity, and it's focused primarily on a leader on top model, giving directions and such to followers on the bottom. This type of leadership style, as you can imagine, is quite bad for a politician, at least for what I want to accomplish. And I think we can think of some authoritarian type leaders of other countries like Kim Jong-un of North Korea, or Vladimir Putin of Russia, or Xi Jinping of China, who basically have a my way or the highway approach to leadership. Democratic leadership style is much more of what I'm going for. According to Dr. Armfield and Dr. Morgan in Human Communication in Action, a democratic leader works with followers and talks to them on the same level. This is the type of leadership I strive to have now, and I hope to have it if I become a politician in the future. We must remember that even in positions of power like politicians, celebrities, CEOs, that we are not better at all as human people, human beings, than anybody else, and that we should treat everyone with respect and to listen to them and their views and opinions. Politicians are meant to work for the people, to help the people. There are different theories about how to do this as a politician, and if you should enact what the people want, even if you don't think it's what's best for them, or if you should enact what you think is best for the people, since you have been granted that power by the people. But either way, you are meant to help the people. I believe we should work together and on a relatively same level, and that leaders, as well as politicians specifically, should work with their followers and constituents instead of working over them. Laissez-faire leaders are different than both authoritarian and democratic ones, doing a more hands-off approach and not providing much direction or inspiration to their followers. This style can be quite useful in certain circumstances, though, when your followers don't really need much oversight because they mostly know what they're doing and have quite a bit of flexibility. Leaders, I would say, need only to step in when needed in these situations. This is definitely a useful style, but as you can imagine, not necessarily very useful for politicians, but could be in some situations. What I need to stress, though, is that the best leaders know when to use different styles and change and adapt their leadership in different contexts and situations. And this holds true through everything. Leaders who are the best at what they do know when to blend different styles, different ways of doing things. They know how to have a good balance. Sometimes in different places and times, you may use all three of these leadership styles. It really depends. But for me, as a hopeful politician, I think the democratic leadership style will be the one I will want to use the most. So what are the attributes that make a good leader? That make a bad leader? Well, according to an article from Southern New Hampshire University by Dr. Jennifer Varney from May 31st, 2023, titled 10 Qualities of a Good Leader, one of them is possessing self-awareness. Saying this is one of the most important qualities for a leader to have is definitely true. I definitely agree with that, and it's a bit of an understatement. Without self-awareness, especially in government roles like being a politician, things can be quite bad. And you start being very unhelpful for reaching goals, making change, and helping people. You need to be, as a leader, a good leader, someone who pays attention to other people, how they feel, how your actions affect them, the impacts of your actions and your words. I feel like sometimes people really don't have super good self-awareness, politicians included, and in fact, maybe especially so, leading to a lot of frustration. The article by Varney says that self-awareness is especially important in times of change and lots of stress, and asks the reader to quote, "Think about how you respond in situations of unexpected change or stress. Is this the way you want to respond?" Unquote. I think if people and leaders thought more critically and self-aware about this, that would lead to a lot less frustration and conflict, and lead to getting more things done and building more relationships and communities. I try to be self-aware in my leadership roles. I'm the president of 3 clubs/organizations at New Mexico State University that I co-created, and I'm also the treasurer of another organization, and the members of the club, how they are feeling and if they enjoy the events and are making good community is very important to me. I try to watch members in events and try to gauge if they are liking things, if they are enjoying themselves, and so on, because they mean a lot to me. I know I could be more self-aware, though, especially sometimes with the things I say, although I've gotten better, I think. I used to, especially through texting and social media, say things before thinking too much about it first, or how the person I maybe was messaging would react or feel about what I said. But I think I've gotten quite a bit better, but I do still need to work on some things. Another attribute the Varney article talks about that makes a good leader is becoming a role model for followers. I think this is one of the most important leadership attributes in general, but especially for politicians because so many people look up to them and count on them to do the right things and make good decisions. Varney goes on to say that followers are always watching their leaders and the actions they do, and can model what they do and the decisions that they make around them, and that, quote, "Good leaders are those who are aware that they are being observed by the team and setting an example for them to follow." I think this is definitely true. And I try to now, as well as hope to in the future, be a good role model for everyone around me. I try to do this by being kind, open, caring, and listening to other people while trying not to judge. I want everyone else as well as myself to do these things, so I try to model these things and be a good role model for others. I think a lot of this was instilled by my parents, who also were very good role models. I know I still have a lot of progress to make, but I'm trying to be as good as a role model as I can. I mentioned at the beginning that we would also be going over some leadership theories. But what even is a leadership theory? Leadership theories are the theories behind why people become leaders and why they act the way they do as leaders, as well as why the followers act the way they do and why the relationship between followers and leaders is the way that it is. They are sort of like philosophy of leadership and leaders, I'd say. A few theories behind leadership that Armfield and Morgan talk about in human communication in action are transformational leadership, leader-member exchange, and servant leadership. Transformational leadership, according to Armfield and Morgan, has 4 parts to it: idealized influence, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation, and individualized consideration. Transformational leaders are usually held to a high moral standard and are looked up to. People want to follow transformational leaders in their visions in order to make a more desirable future. Transformational leaders inspire followers as well as challenge them to help them grow. They also try to work with followers and help build them to no longer even need a leader anymore. Transformational leaders are not focused on self-interest, but instead focused on team effort. This leadership theory is also reiterated in a Western Governors University (WGU) article titled Leadership Theories and Styles from April 7, 2020. And in the article, they quote Ralph Nader, who says, quote, "The function of leadership is to produce more leaders, not followers," unquote. And they go on to say that in this theory, leaders should inspire and lift their followers to grow to new heights. I think this is definitely a leadership theory that politicians should follow, but many I don't believe do. I want to be this. I want to be a transformational leader, especially if I become a politician. But I also want to be a servant leader. Robert K. Greenleaf of the Robert K. Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership coined the phrase servant leadership. And an excerpt from Greenleaf's essay, The Servant as Leader, found on the center's website page titled, What is Servant Leadership? Copyright 2021. He says, quote, "The servant leader is servant first. It begins with the natural feeling that one wants to serve first. Then conscious choice brings one to aspire to lead. That person is sharply different from one who's leader first, perhaps because of the need to assert an unusual power drive or to acquire material possessions. The leader first and the servant first are 2 extreme types. Between them, there are shadings and blends that are part of the infinite variety of human nature. I want to be a servant leader. I want to embody servant leadership and remember that my role as a leader is to serve the people. That's why I want to become a politician, to serve and help the people. I want all politicians, I wish they would all have this servant first mentality, but unfortunately I don't think all of them do. The basis behind this leadership theory is that you want to serve, you want to help, and that's why you become a leader. I hope even if I become a politician, even with all the difficulties, I do not lose this vision. I want to be able to stay true to this and myself. So now we've looked at different styles, like different traits, different theories, like looking at our leadership styles of authoritarian leaders, democratic leaders, and laissez-faire leaders. And we looked at the different traits that make a good leader, like possessing self-awareness and being a good role model. And then we took a look at the leadership theories, like transformational leadership and servant leadership. And so now, how do our leaders actually compare to this? How do we fare? Sadly, especially when it comes to politicians, a lot of people are not necessarily doing a good job. Instead of trying to bring people together, they pull them apart. And instead of being self-aware and thinking about the impact of their words, many times they say things with big ramifications. And instead of being role models and spreading kindness and lifting everyone up, oftentimes they're only role models for and only show kindness and lift people up who are on their side or agree with their views, while sometimes pushing people down who don't. I don't think this is acceptable. And instead, we must understand we all have different views, but still come together, respect, compromise, and lift people up. I want to do this. I try to do this already. I want to do this in the future. I hope I can, and I hope I will. So again, I ask you, what do you really want in a leader? This has been Isaac Kramer. I hope you have a great day.